MDJ podcast. And what does that stand for?
Mr. DJ Podcast. What's going on, YouTube? Back at you with another video. We're here with podcast number 12, and I have two very special guests that are joining me on this episode today. You guys can introduce yourselves.
Do you want to go? Okay, I'm Quill. I'm from the UK, and you can find me at a perpetrator with a quill on Instagram. I'm a dark poet.
And I am the Pretty Provocative Poet. You can find me at the Pretty Provocative Poet on Instagram. I do have an album on all digital platforms called Poetry in the Key of Life. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool. So basically, how I met them, to kind of give people watching some context, is basically I write poetry and I make poetry short films on my YouTube channel. And I was recently kind of thinking of ways to kind of connect with other people who write. And I was thinking like, man, wouldn't it be cool if I got to sit and talk with other poets or people who write, or do an open mic or something like that? And I talked to a friend of mine. She was like, why don't you start your own thing? Which is kind of harder than it sounds. You know what I'm saying? But and then I was on Instagram, and then I think I just put in like hashtag poets, hashtag open mic. And then I found David. And I was like, oh, okay, he seems pretty cool. So I watched a couple of videos and things like that. And then I followed you, followed me back. And then I think the next day, if not maybe the following day after that, you did a live with, oh, what's your first name, by the way? My bad.
Oh, Quill. I go by Quill.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, and then you guys did a Instagram live together, and that's when I dropped in, and that's when you were, you guys read two of my poems and stuff. And then you guys had a lot of good energy. I wasn't sure because I was like, man, you know, it's poetry, it's really personal. I don't know how people are really going to take it. You know, I've never met them before. So I was like, you know, asking you guys questions. You guys were really cool. You guys seem like nice people. And then I just figured, you know what, since I haven't done a podcast episode since April, it would be cool if I had you guys come on and, you know, talk about the art of poetry, the craft of poetry and things like that. So in no particular order, how did you guys get into poetry? Like the who, what, where, when, and why? I know that was
no, that's cool. So I got into poetry through the medium of hip hop. So when I was 11, I had a lot of anger and a lot of pain issues because my father had left the family and I didn't know how to express it. And I remember sitting down and listening to the radio and hearing this song by Nas called Life's a Bitch. Mm-hmm. And I just remember feeling like, yo, you can express yourself in hip hop like this. I was like, yo, this is mad cool. So I wrote down all his lyrics and then I started trying to create my own. Mm-hmm. And that was how I kind of began my journey of writing. And I literally wrote every day from that day until now. Sometimes I write multiple times a day, but that was the beginning of my journey. And January of this year, I stepped into the spoken word community on Instagram and just fell in love with the art, and I've been trying to get better every day.
Oh, cool. Quill?
So I had a panic attack last year, and I sat down and I wrote something afterwards, and it turned out to be a poem. That's literally what happened.
Really?
So ever since then I've been writing every day since.
Oh, all right, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, you know, I wasn't expecting that at all. But you know, how you start is how you start.
I've been writing my whole life, but poetry is like relatively new to me. So I'm pleased that I found it. It's definitely
so you've always been writing, but poetry is something that you got into within the last year. So what kind of writing did you do before?
I'm like the weird kid that likes to write essays and things like that. Like I love doing stuff like that.
You're not weird at all, because I've written a few video essays on my channel. So like I like to watch like Marvel movies and stuff. And there's a show called Marvel's What If on Disney Plus, and it's basically like an alternate universe. And I just did a video essay called Power, Choice, and Inevitability. So it's basically about the Doctor Strange episode. And I just like to write essays too. So you're not weird at all.
That's pretty cool.
I think it's like,
cool.
You know, like writing is just writing in general, you know?
Yeah, so definitely.
Just like one big umbrella, and then poetry just happens to be in that. But, you know, if you're writing,
Marvel and writing is just, that's everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So for me, I think I might have told you guys a little bit about that on the Instagram live. I guess was that a couple weeks ago, and I was basically when I was in school, I needed an elective to take, and then the advisor was just like, "Oh, why don't you take creative writing?" Mind you, I hadn't done any writing like outside of class. I think like the only time I ever written anything was for English class. Like if I had to write an essay or something. And then once we got to the poetry unit of the class, it just stuck. And at that time I was going through like a breakup. So like me and my ex, we broke up in like December, and then the class started in March. And then when we got to the poetry section, it was like April, and I had a lot to say. So when they were like, "Oh, write a sonnet or write a ode or write a free verse, poetry or a haiku," I was just talking about that because that's just what was on my mind. So how I really felt on the inside was what was coming out. So people were writing about like colors and cars and things like that. And then I was talking about, my relationship. I think the first one, it ended, I was like, something, a lot like an autumn leaf dying, holding on. So I forgot what the beginning was, because basically I wrote so much about my ex that like my whole book was filled of like poetry with her, and I got rid of it all. Like, because it was, for me, it was just like, why am I sitting here writing so much about somebody that like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know what to do with all of this. So I got rid of it. But that's the part that I remember, like the last sentence. And then everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, like, are you okay?" Like, you know what I'm saying? So that was pretty much my introduction to poetry. So then I just wake up in the middle of the night. If I had like a couple of sentences or phrases or things that rhymed in my head, I would literally just wake up and either write it down or put it in my phone, And then eventually I just started making poetry short films. I figured, why not turn it into something tangible? So that way I can look back at a certain time period in my life. So not only do I know what it sounds like in terms of the poetry, but I know what it looks like in terms of like the time period with the use of colors and like sound bites and stuff. That's basically what my short films are. So I have like a sound bite of somebody who's talking about what I ended up writing about. So by the time you get to my poem at the end, people are like, I get it, because with all the visuals and the sounds, it helps get like the point across, in a profound way, if you get what I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the thing is, like, that type of writing, I feel like it connects with so many different people. And it's funny you said that, because literally this morning I wrote a piece about heartbreak about a woman, and I posted it this morning. So I'm, like, how many years later, I'm still going through that same process of, when you're feeling those emotions, sometimes you don't even know how to or you don't know how to think about those, or you're not thinking about those emotions properly. But when you put it into your pen, then all of a sudden you can see how you feel and hear how you feel when you audibly say it, or for you visualize it through the YouTube medium as well.
Yeah.
So,
oh no, good. Yeah, my bad. What'd you say?
Oh no, that's okay. Like PPP's articulated it beautifully. Like, I'm not very good with words, but I'm better with poetry. So to write it all down in a poem, to me, is just like a diary, and it's so cathartic, and that's how I feel on a page. So that's basically what I do.
Yeah. Well, that was actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was the next thing I was going to ask you guys about, is like, what does like poetry mean to you? And it's kind of like you said, like sometimes you may not be able to find the words to say to somebody, but it's just easier to put it into words, like, via your pen, like on paper, so, but what does it mean to you guys? Like, so if someone were to like ask you, like, what does poetry mean to you? Like, what would you say? If that makes sense. I could phrase it better if you need me to.
Yeah, that does make sense. It means to me a word of articulating my thoughts and making sense of them. But I've been more creative with my writing recently. I've been writing about horror and things like that. So
really,
it's a creative outlet, but it's also cathartic to me. So it means a lot.
Yeah, and for me, poetry it's almost like my way of survival, because I find for me it's like I have to pour my emotions into poetry, and if I don't, then I hold it inside, because I don't talk to people about how I feel, and it's not healthy. for me to hold it inside. So at least through poetry, I can express it and let it go and just be like, okay, I'm done with that feeling and that emotion. But if I didn't, I would probably hold it inside forever and no one would know how I felt.
Nah,
Yeah,
I relate 100% to that, because it's like you said, it'll sit and it'll fester, and sometimes, like, especially like if you don't have good things to say, it'll kind of like rot and erode on the inside, and it's like, dang, I never said anything. But to me, it's kind of like she said, just a way of articulating thoughts. It's like a message, like to yourself, like for future reference, especially if you keep it somewhere. Like, let's say you might write something about, like, a bad 2 weeks of your life or a bad couple of months, and then you read it a year from now and it's like, wow, like I made so much progress since then, or I'm just this much of a different person since I wrote that. Because even for me, it's like when I watch some of my videos, like my poetry videos, it's weird because it's either like I still feel that way or I don't feel that way, and I don't even recognize the guy in the video because maybe just that time period of that space was just so bad. It's like I don't even identify with it anymore because it's just been so long, or I've made so much progress since then.
Gotcha.
So you kind of mentioned the fact that it's like survival. So I was gonna ask you guys, if you didn't already kind of give me the answer already, but how has it helped you cope with like the trials and like issues of like life and so on?
Well, for me, like me personally, it's been just the medium where I could actually see how I feel. And I know that probably sounds bizarre, but I literally, a lot of times, I battle anxiety. So my brain is consistently like swirling. So sometimes I can't actually slow my brain down enough to think about one particular thing or to examine how I feel about one particular thing. But when I start writing poetry, for some reason, it's like I can funnel all my emotions into a pen, and then I can look back at it and be like, oh, well, that's how I feel about this subject, or that's the pain or the love or the joy that I'm feeling in that moment. But sometimes I can't actually think about it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's weird. But through poetry, I can visualize and hear it through poetry.
You basically said what I was going to say, but in a much more articulate way. Sometimes I use metaphors a lot in my poetry, and I think as like, I guess if I can see it through the means of like the ocean, or I don't know, like even a zombie attacking me or something, then I can use my creativity and express how I feel all in the same thing, and it just kind of ticks so many boxes for me. So yeah.
Oh, one more thing that I wanted to say actually on that topic is I also use poetry to examine myself or to try to be to be totally transparent. There's a part of me, I'm very submissive. Like I have a very shy, submissive, quiet personality. But through poetry, I try to be more dominant, and hoping that, in turn, a little bit of that will rub off on my personality. So through poetry, if you listen to my poetry, a lot of times it's very aggressive, but if you talk to me on a regular basis, like I'm very shy and
it's like a juxtaposition.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like a little bit, I use poetry to see if a little bit of that can rub off on my personality. And it does in certain parts of my life, not all where I want it, but it's a journey.
Yeah. I've done that a couple of times too. I've written about being like a demon and a vampire and stuff like that. And obviously I'm none of those things. So yeah, it kind of, you can just embody whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. I think for me, I kind of look at poetry as sort of like a friend, if that makes sense. Like just, it's always going to be there. People can come and go in your life like at any point, but your ability to express yourself through poetry is permanent. Like, unless you lose your hands, God forbid, like that's always going to be something that you can depend on to like listen to you. You know what I'm saying? To be there when you have to say something, however it is that you have to say it, And so I think that's what it has.
Even in that case, you still have.
Right.
I was going to say, even in that case, you would still have the spoken word. So even if you lost your hand, you could
exactly.
Still
you can still in your mind. Can still say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was probably gonna. What'd you say, Quill?
That's so nice that it's a friend. I just love that.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, because I never even really articulated that until like I did a Twitch stream like in like February, and then I just posted a video of it, you know, just the other day. And I was saying that, you know, like my love of like dance, because I make dance videos too. I can dance like Michael Jackson really well. And yeah, I can. And I was just saying that, you know, my love of dance and the craft and, you know, being an actor will always be there. So I don't have to. So with that said, the peace of mind that comes with that, I don't have to worry so much about who I'm going to have a falling out with next or who's not going to be there. You know what I'm saying? And I find like solace and comfort in that. So the average person that finds comfort in like, you know, like substance abuse or, you know, like drinking or other people, you know, whatever, you know how most people, they tend to turn to, you know, different, you know, external things. But in this case scenario, I don't really need anyone to express myself that way, you know. And if at any point I'm cutting out, let me know, because I hope I'm not.
I'm a people pleaser, so I've never thought about it like that before. Like I don't have to please my pen, like unless I just become really bad at poetry. But.
Exactly. Your pen never asks you to be anything other than what you are. You know what I'm saying? Like it'll always be there. And that to me is like what like friendship is. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like true friendship. It's just like you'll always be there, no matter if I'm telling you I don't want to be here anymore. I don't even know, like, because I've written a poem called Resolve, and I was trying to find the resolve to live life. Because I was asking myself, like, what makes life worth living? You know, and then I would, before I even wrote it, I was just asking people, like just random people, like, you know, what makes your life worth living? And then people would say, oh, the majority of people said that they're loved ones. So, and I asked them, I said, well, what would you do if you didn't have those loved ones? And they couldn't answer that question because that's what I was going through earlier this year. You know, so no matter what the subject matter, you're like, you know, some people, like they want you to talk to them about what you're going through, but they don't really want to hear what you're going through. You know what I'm saying? Like you know what I'm saying? Like they don't really want to hear, but your pen does, your piece of paper does. You know what I'm saying? And that to me is like the coolest thing in the world.
There's a definite difference between how are you and sort of like, oh, how are you sort of thing. And yeah, it's the people that listen that I want to be my friend. I don't want the people that don't really care.
Yeah. So
simple as that, really.
Have you guys at all I mean, like I said, I felt that way just by like coming in the live, but like vulnerability with sharing your poetry, like what was it like David or Quill, like what was it like for you guys, like the first time you really put yourselves out there and shared your poetry with like a, you know, numerous amount of people?
So for me, it was actually a friend that pushed me into it. So a friend of mine in December was like, yo, you've been writing poetry for years. Why don't you share it with the world? Like you keep holding it to yourself. And like, there's this whole Instagram community of poets that you could go and share your poetry with. And I was like, really? I was like, oh, well, maybe. My immediate thought was, well, I don't have to be on a stage. No one has to really see me. I didn't really understand the totality of it, or I probably would have not did it because I didn't know that I'd make so many connections. But yeah, she pushed me into it, and then in January I just leaped in. And I was just like, okay, I'll share one piece and see how it's received. And a lot of people were like, yo, thank you for sharing that piece. It touched me or whatever. And you know, from there it was like, okay, well, I feel like the more pieces I do is the more I become comfortable with the idea of being transparent. So the more I write now and share with the community, I'm being more comfortable being transparent. But definitely when I joined in January, I was not doing any personal pieces. It was just kind of, I was doing creative pieces that, you know, people would be like, oh, you know, that was so dope or whatever. But I wasn't doing any real heartfelt pieces until probably, I would say maybe around March. Okay. It took about 2 months for me to become vulnerable to my poetry.
I think an element of disassociation was there with me. Like I just kind of put the poetry out there and didn't think about the consequences. I was just like, oh, no one's going to read this, it's fine. And then people started commenting on my stuff and sort of saying that they relate to it. And I was just like, hang on a minute, there's people actually reading my stuff.
Right.
And I just kind of, I was putting stuff out there thinking no one else feels like this, it's just me that feels like this. And yeah, it is scary though, kind of just chucking stuff out on the internet.
Right.
But I struggle with spoken word. Like, I don't know how, like, David does it. I find that so scary.
I don't either.
I feel like writing stuff down and putting it on a screen is far more like safer than just sitting here and like bearing my soul. Like, people can see my face.
And what's so bizarre is I'm the opposite way. I feel like it's so much easier to do spoken word because I get to bring the emotions out of my poetry. But I feel like if someone's reading my poetry, that I feel like maybe they won't care about it, or they won't get the feeling out of it because maybe I didn't do a good job of the writing. So I feel like spoken word is actually easier. It's like a cheat code. Yeah, really? In my opinion. But I really do believe spoken word is easier.
That makes more sense than what I just said.
well, because it's like, when I YouTube's like spoken word poetry, and then I was looking at like the different performances of people, doing it, and they just have so much energy, and it's like you hear people in the back are like, amen, like, and then I'm like, yo, like, how do they even, like, yo, how do they have that kind of energy, especially if it's something super personal? I mean, some of the ones that I watched were like about politics and different issues going on in the country, so I think that's a bit easier, but like, I couldn't even really imagine doing like real spoken word to people about like my innermost feelings and thoughts, like, because I just feel like most people, they couldn't relate. Like, I can imagine like me finishing, I'm like, okay, guys, that's my poem, and then everybody's just sitting there like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you'd be surprised though, because I felt that way until I did. So when I did my piece, which I'm going to do today, the Introvert's Anthem, I literally wrote that piece. Well, when I wrote the piece, was because I was on a live, I did a poem, and then the host was talking to me after. And I remember thinking to myself, why do I feel so uncomfortable talking to the person? But when I was doing the poem, I was fine. Like, I didn't feel weird at all. So after, when I got off that live, that's when I started to write this piece about being introverted. And I remember when I performed it the first time, I just thought, like, I just wanted to get it off my chest to let people know that, hey, I know I seem extroverted because I'm animated when I do my poetry, but really I'm not. I'm very shy and introverted. But then when I did that piece, a whole slew of people hit my DMs or like, yo, thank you for sharing that piece, because it felt like we had a voice finally, because I said a lot of stuff that they felt, but they didn't know how to articulate. So I feel like a lot of times we feel that our poetry is for ourselves, not realizing that so many other people can relate and connect to how we think as well as people and poets.
Because that day, go ahead, Quill.
It's funny what you said about the audience, because I'm exactly the same. Like, I can't imagine if I'm talking about my anxiety and my depression that people are going to be like, yes, well done.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
Like, honestly, but I guess there's that element that they probably won't do that, but they might sit there and, think, oh, actually, this woman understands what I'm going through. Like, this poem helped me. But like you, I've seen a lot of politics, a lot of people sort of doing like quite animated and quite, passionate about their poetry. Like, there's no way I could stand and get passionate about being anxious and depressed. Like,
yeah.
But I think I'm just overthinking it.
Well, because the first time that I actually wrote something that was meant to be like spoken was a poem that I actually just made a video for called "Can You See Me?" And I told myself that that's the last poem or anything that I'm writing about my last relationship. I was like, that's it. I'm drawing the line at that, because even, I'm not even going to lie, like, even when I sent it to her, because we still kind of talk here and there, like, I didn't get the response that I thought that I was going to get. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, yo, yeah, I wrote you something. And then she read it, and all I got was like, LOL. And like, that was it. So I was like, yo, I'm not doing this no more. I was like, that's it. But it's still a good poem anyway, because I went to my friend's house to record it, because I was like, yo, I'm going to do a video about it. And then he was like, yo, bro, this is crazy, man. Like, yo, I'm going to listen to this in my car, blah, blah, blah. I was like, really? I was like, you like this? Like, what? I'm just talking about, like always having a certain love for somebody, even if it's not what I want. Because I always used to think like, you when you break up with somebody, you have to be mad. you know, because 9 times out of 10, most people, when they break up, they're rarely ever on like speaking terms, or it's rarely ever like, you know, I still have love for you regardless if us isn't a thing anymore. So that's why I wrote that in the first place. And because I didn't really get like, oh, like this made me cry, or, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I thought. So I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that no more. I was like, if I do write something, I said, let me write something, you know, about myself. So even if it is like stems from like some kind of lovelessness or, you know, something like that, let it be about me rather than me directing that energy towards someone else who may not even receive it, you know?
Yeah. I think majority of people will resonate with heartbreak though. I know that I definitely can. And so I think a lot of people would definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, because I have like a bunch of other talking points that I wanted to talk about. So what do you guys think about, so do you guys at all ever consider writing in the different like by the book styles of poetry? Like I said in the beginning, like a haiku or an ode or a sonnet. Because I mean, for the most part, I think that it's limiting, you know, like if you have something to say, you have something to say. I wouldn't really want to limit it to like a structure, you know, like I could go out of my way to do that, but generally like I consider it to be like free verse poetry. You're just saying what comes to mind. If it rhymes, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. So that's just my take on it. I don't know how you guys feel about the different styles.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't know what a haiku is. I don't know what a sonnet is. I don't know anything about poetry, if I'm honest.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely.
I literally don't know.
Yeah, so for me, so I definitely, when I'm writing for myself, then no, I don't use any rules in fact, I know I break the rules a lot of times. Even as a spoken word artist, I feel like I'm so different. And a lot of the poetry that I do is erotic poetry. And if you listen to a lot of erotic poets, usually they're kind of smooth and laid back. But if you listen to my erotic poetry, I'm very aggressive in my delivery. So even in spoken word, I feel like I break a lot of the rules. But I do encourage people to try out the different styles of poetry. So for instance, I just wrote my first sonnet last week. And it was fun. Like I thought it would have been boring, or I wouldn't have been able to be as creative. But I had fun with it. It was pretty interesting. So I do encourage people to try out the different styles, because you never know what you'd like by doing it.
Yeah, I think if I wrote any at all, it was probably for the class that I used to be in. But again, like I destroyed all that poetry, so I don't, you know, I wouldn't even remember how it came out or how it sounded, you know, when I did it. But let me ask you, David. So I have written like 1 or 2 like erotic poems, like not recently, but I think maybe a couple. Like I think maybe 2017 or 18 was probably the last time like I wrote something about like sex in particular. So. Right. Being that you're you know an introverted guy, like where does your inspiration for that come from? Like I guess like so like the relationships that you might have.
All right, so there's 2 things. So first thing is I'm very open when it comes to sexuality, and I like to say that I'm sex positive, and what I mean by that is I try to encourage adults to actually speak about sex, because I feel like it's something that we all take part in. We all enjoy. Right. Well, most people enjoy, but we don't, for some reason, there's this stigma behind verbalizing it. So I do try to, I use my erotic poetry to promote it as number 1. And number 2, when I was in therapy again, because I went through bad divorce, not divorce, sorry, I'm going through a divorce. But
I feel the same way, man. I feel that.
in the process, I was talking to my therapist, and I was like, you know, I want to become more dominant in my personality, because I feel like a lot of women like dominant men, but I'm very shy, submissive. And he was like, well, you write poetry. Why don't you try and put that in your poetry? So that's actually how I started writing so many erotic poems from a dominant personality, was through therapy. And that's kind of how I journeyed into that avenue.
Oh, you got a good therapist. I don't think any therapist like recommended me any cool like poetry ideas or anything like that. But cool. Oh yeah, because I just wanted to ask that, because I've seen Have you ever seen? I'm pretty sure you've seen Love Jones. Have you ever seen Love Jones?
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Exactly. So, in Love Jones, like I figured, like yeah, like if I were to write something like that, it would have to be smooth, like Darius's character. You know what I'm saying? Like just the way that he, they call me brother to the night. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't like I'm not gonna say that it's not in me, but I just haven't reached that space yet where like that's just what I write about. So I applaud you for that because I can't do it yet.
Yeah, and it's not for everyone. But what I would say is like be organic. Like this is who I am. So love me or hate me. This is what I write. You get who I am. Like I don't pretend to be someone I'm not in my poetry. I'm definitely straight up in my poetry. And like I said, I'm not smooth. I don't think I'm smooth in my poetry. If I am, well, maybe I am. But I feel like I'm very aggressive in my poetry. But that's who I am, and I enjoy to write like that. So that's how it comes out.
Word.
I've written some poetry as well, but I don't really know where it comes from, and I don't think it's very good.
What?
It is good.
Wait, you said you've written from like an erotic perspective before?
Yeah, I've got some on my page. It's not very good, but
why? See, what's funny? I don't really think that there's such thing as a good or a bad poem because I think that it came from a good place, which is you. You know what I'm saying? Like you're a good person, so therefore it came from a good place. That's why I said I think earlier today or yesterday I was like, what you probably think is your worst poem is probably really good if I read it. You know what I mean? So like, yeah.
No, I just don't profess to be. I don't profess to be an erotic poet, so that's why I say it's just not where my. I just don't think it's one of my strengths, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I think we just tend to write about whatever just we're feeling at that particular moment. Because I guess switching topics, like for me, I would say like my creative process is before I ask you guys, it's like I'm feeling something and then words come in my head and I have to write it down that moment, even if I don't finish it, but I'll get like a few lines as a concept and then I'll go back to it, and that generally tends to be about like whatever space that I'm in. Like I almost so back in April or May, I wanted to write from like a political, social, racial place. And then initially I was going to call it Black Minds, right? Just a place of like frustration and just like, wanting to ask questions to my own people specifically, like, where is your mind at? It evolved into a video, basically. So it was a video interview with myself and Malcolm X. So I feel like all my feelings, I just put that into that instead. So what it was essentially, it's called Questions from Malcolm X. And I took as many speeches of his that I was able to get off of the internet. And I pretty much weaved it together in the form of an interview. So I'm literally asking Malcolm X questions and I'm getting answers back. And the cool part about it is that a lot of what he's saying relates to today and everything that's going on today. So that's why I made sure to ask him like, oh, what do you think about Black Lives Matter? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And these are all contemporary questions, so I feel like what started off as a poem evolved into, something much greater, than that. But I don't know what, like I said, your processes are.
that's such a creative idea. I'd never in a million years think to do that. That's
right.
I need to watch that video. Like it's just like your mind is just, oh my god, I'd never think to do that. That's amazing. I'm going to say
next level.
I think it's just like the sum of like a lot of frustration and anger, fears, what I'm saying, like resentments to other people as well as my own, just because it's sometimes like, you might turn on the news and you might ask yourself like, why does the world have to be the way that it is? Like what's the reasoning? And in fact, the intro to that was basically a bunch of newscasts that, consist of like the bad things that are happening to people that look like me and people that look like David. You know what I'm saying? Like just to give people an idea of what it's like, but then also in the interview, what we as a people do to ourselves. So it's literally just like on all sides. So it's just food for thought, something to get people thinking about what they might not like, thinking outside of the box and outside of their normal thought processes, because I'm pretty sure, Quill, like if you ever heard of the civil rights movement, you only think of, Martin Luther King because he's the guy, and people don't talk about Malcolm X as much as they talk about Martin Luther King. So that's why I used him as an example. So, that's like the beauty of poetry. So poetry can give you one idea, and then you'll take that, throw it on a canvas, and then it'll become something else.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I loved how powerful poetry can be. And that is the ultimate way to use it. Definitely. That's incredible.
So where does poetry start for y'all? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, bro. My bad.
No, it's cool, man. So I was just gonna say, for me, my writing, it's weird. Like I said, like I wrote something this morning at like 3:00 this morning where I couldn't sleep. I had this heartbreak on my mind, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna write about it. Mm-hmm. So it could be as easy as that. It could be me at the mall shopping, and I'll just see a sign, like literally see a sign for a store, and I'll be like, oh, I see a poem out of that, and I'll just start, either in my mind, or I'll write it down or type it in my phone, type a poem that way. Or sometimes I'll be listening to music and I'll hear a line and I'll be like, yo, that could be a whole poem. And, or just even in a conversation, something you may say and that may spark an idea. And I'll be like, okay, I got this whole poem idea out of that. And I'll begin writing like that. But it can be my writing doesn't have one, I don't start from one particular place. I kind of just write, wherever the moment is and whatever mood I'm in. That's what I'm usually writing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the same. Sometimes it kind of comes from an emotional place, but I can literally just be walking around and see a leaf, and like I just get inspired by anything. Right. Like I was walking through the park last year and I saw a butterfly, and I've written a poem about that butterfly. And it's just anything. I'm inspired by anything, particularly music, definitely. Music and other poets as well. Like someone will say a line in a poem and I might not necessarily use that line, but something out of that poem has just inspired me. Right. So yeah.
I can get inspiration from anywhere, anyone, anytime. Quill actually she writes a lot of those horror, I call them horror poetry. I don't know if there's another name for it, but I was inspired to write a piece like that. So I asked her if she would collab, or maybe she asked me. I can't remember who asked who, but we ended up collabing, and it was super. I thought it was super dope. I really enjoyed that piece.
So you guys
I love that piece. That's really good.
Oh, so you guys collabed on a piece together?
Yeah.
I definitely want to.
Really dark.
I don't know. I definitely got to see that because I never. Well, so how does that work? Because I've never collabed with anybody on like a written piece, so to speak.
I do think there's only I like to say I'll write a stanza and then I'll get someone to reply back to me, and then I find that easier, but other people have different ways of doing it. Oh,
okay. So
I find that easier. Because
what I was gonna say earlier was that kind of like how you guys are inspired by music. I always like to, like, I have books about like artists, like, Michael Jackson, most specifically, and I love reading about like the backstory to like songs. How like he would have started with one song, but then how it changed to something else, and then how he might like write something and then go back to it, and how ideas change. And I look at, like poetry is kind of like musical in a way, because it's like the song of the soul, what I'm saying? Like, it's just not meant to be said in a musical way, like a melodic way, but these are still, it's like the application is still the same. Because music, like lyrics, is just, sequenced words. And in poetry, it's pretty much the same way, except it may or may not be melodic,
If you get a chance, check out the autobiography of Quincy Jones. You'll enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because by being a fan of Michael Jackson, you come to know a couple of things about, Quincy. So that's cool.
That's my favorite book of all time, like hands down, greatest book ever written.
Really?
In my opinion.
I'll definitely check it out. So this is something that I think I might have seen on Quill's Instagram a couple of times, like, when you're just scrolling around. And I don't even know if this is really a good topic, but because I've written poems from that aspect, you have, and David has too. What are your thoughts on triggering poetry, because that's something that I find, interesting, because it's like you like writing from a super dark like place, like just like a not good place. Like even me, there's some poems that like I've written, I don't even want to read them, you know, because like it'll just make me feel bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? I've literally, like, to give you like an idea, like I've literally written like a poem, like a suicide letter, like for real. Like I'm talking about like meant for other people to read if I'm not here, you know? And I don't know what's your thoughts on that. It's just a talking point that I figured, you know, may or may not be good for discussion. But if you guys want to change the subject, you know, no problem.
I don't have a problem talking about it. Do you, David?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the platform that we're a part of. That's kind of...
Yeah, Fireflies for Dark Mine was started because of that. I mean, I think if you don't necessarily have to put everything on Instagram. So if it's cathartic and it helps you, I guess you could always keep it for yourself.
Right.
But I think as long as you're not delivering that poem without a trigger warning, then I think it's perfectly fine. I think trigger warnings are important. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've triggered myself with my own poem before on a live, and yeah, I personally don't have an issue with triggering poems, because if it's cathartic for the writer, then I think that's important. So that's my stance on it.
Yeah, and for the most part, I write more happy, funny. I try to write more happy, funny, creative, love, erotic poetry. But I do have I actually wrote one last week and posted it. It was because I was in that headspace of just having suicidal thoughts, and I did write it and share it. But I did put trigger suicidal thoughts, because I know what it's like, because I myself have triggers, and I know what it's like to someone sends you a poem to read, and you don't even, like, they don't put the trigger, and you start reading it, and then you realize, oh man, this is hitting a little bit too close to home for me.
Right.
So I do encourage poets, if you are going to do that type of poetry, then please put a trigger on it, because it really is important for those of us that do have those triggers. It would mean a lot if you just do us the favor and put a trigger warning at the beginning.
So how important do you think it is for writers and poets to kind of have conversations like this, and the importance of people connecting with one another? So that way, you know, writing poetry or just being a writer in general is not so, you know, solitary. Because for me, like I said, for as long as I've been doing it, it's been pretty solitary. Like, this is actually like the first time that I sat with somebody or, you know, people and talked about poetry and writing and, you know, different things like that. So how important do you think it is for, you know, other people to do that?
I think it's really important, because I'm extroverted, and I think if I didn't have people that understood my poetry, I feel quite alone, I think. But I started Fireflies for Dark Minds because I wanted to create a platform for people like that could openly talk about mental health, and if poetry is the way that they do that, I think that's really important. But also it's nice to bounce ideas off each other during these conversations as well. Mm-hmm. And talk about I think it's important.
Yeah, and for me, I would say collabing with other poets and getting to know other poets, is you will grow as a poet. Because I know I have just meeting, even just being a part of a mental health. I never placed a focus on poetry until I joined the platform. And then it got me thinking about how I could write and how I could engage more people through speaking about mental health, and also strengthen my mental health by speaking about it. But I would have never done that unless I connected with poets and began to grow in that journey.
Right.
It's also like a way to evolve your writing, like you said, and I don't think my writing would be where it is without other poets. So it's definitely, because I didn't know anything about poetry. I still don't. I don't profess to know anything, but I think from talking to other people, it's definitely feedback. So I like people to tell me if a poem is crap or not.
Well, so in what ways do you feel, because I'm just curious, like, so how would, you know, speaking with you guys more and other people who write, how would my writing evolve? So how has your poetry evolved, you know, since, you know, meshing with other people?
So I know for myself, I used to think I only wrote one way, like that's my style. But then when I started doing collaborations with other poets, one, you can't always impose your style on someone else, number one. And number two, when you hear the way other people write, sometimes it gives you a new perspective of how you can put phrases together, how you can put words together, how you can even put concepts together.
Right.
So your opens up when you it's like the more friends you have, like if you have just one friend, all your conversations are kind of the same, one-sided. But the more friends you have, you realize that you can talk about basketball, you can talk about girls, you can talk about movies. There's so much more than just one thing. So like with poetry and poets, it's kind of the same thing. The more you expose yourself to is the more you have. Think of it like a language. The more letters you have is the more words you can form. So the more poets you connect with is the more styles of poetry that you can pull from.
Cool. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, what David said. I can't think of to say it. You said it perfectly.
Yeah, definitely. So, as you guys know, I figured it'd be really cool if we had a bit of an open mic, and you guys shared some pieces. I have one, and I guess I'll go, whenever whoever wants to go first will go first. I'll go after them. I'll go last, or you want to hear it first,
I think you should go first because we haven't heard you.
Cool.
We've heard each other.
So this poem is called "It's Okay to Be Me," and the same night that I actually found your Instagram was the night that I wrote that. Because I saw the little video and you were saying that that's the prompt. Why is it okay? To be you. And then right then and there. So that was actually that was one of the fastest poems that I wrote. Because I was like, man, I want to talk to them. I want to do this. So I was like, cool, let me just write something. And what's funny, I wrote that whole thing to miss the live that you guys did because I was on the phone with a family member for like 4 hours. I hadn't heard from her in like, I don't know how long. So when we talked, we were just on the phone all night. And I was like, dang, so you asked the question, why is it okay to be me? My answer is as plain as day, easy to see. In this matrix we're all living in, the fact that I'm the only one of me, I feel an immense pride. You see, like Neo, I'm the one. Articulate, creative, handsome, intellectual. To say the least, that's all factual. Now, all of that sounds great, but that's not all. I'm no exception to the fact that we all got flaws. I can be jealous, overzealous, spiteful, the opposite of delightful. And on my worst day, hateful. Forgetting what it means to be grateful. When it comes to the contents of my character, I don't get to be selective. Good and bad traits is just a matter of perspective. It's about acceptance. The day I realized it's okay to be me is the day that I realized that self-love doesn't come from up above. It comes from in here. The man in the mirror isn't someone I should fear. Eventually, things became clear. In this thing we call life, my number one ally is with me all the time, right here. And for all who's listening, while you're near, I hope you enjoy the view. And I hope you know too, that it's always okay to be you.
I love that so much. That was
good.
I love it, especially because it was my prompt. I feel like,
yeah. So you was the inspiration. You was definitely inspiration for that.
I'm so happy to hear that. That was so good.
That was so good, bro.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, I was just still upset that I couldn't get to read it that night. Being able to read it for you guys, honestly, is like a good consolation to that. So it makes me feel good. You guys appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy that we got to see it. We were the only audience.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about making a video for it, because I think that's because it's like a lighter poem, and it's sometimes I think it's like you feel bad about the qualities of yourself that other people don't like. And, I wear a yin yang pendant because it's about balance of self. There's good and there's bad, and you have to accept that, because I feel like the minute that you try to shove things down is when it gets violent, and then it comes to the surface, especially at times when, it's not necessary or it's not appropriate. So I think it has a good message. And for people who might be struggling with like loving themselves or self-acceptance, I think like that's just good food for thought. Like, maybe it is okay for me to be me,
And that was the whole point of me doing that prompt.
Yeah. So cool.
I love that. I love that about the yin yang as well. That's so true.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't go anywhere without wearing it now.
Well, a lot of my pieces are quite dark and people feel uncomfortable about that, but I think you have to dark and light to balance each other out. So.
Facts.
Definitely.
Did you want to do first or should I do mine? I don't actually know what I'm doing.
You don't know what you're doing?
No, I've got an idea of what I'm gonna do.
Oh.
So
Shall I
whichever
do
You want
one,
to go first? Or?
ladies first, David goes first.
I'll go first. So this is a poem that I wrote to my pen. That I wrote in a Cynical Insomniacs workshop, which is a workshop that me and David attended together. It's an amazing workshop. I'm just going to advertise it. It's really good. Cool. But yeah, so this is like a different perspective, but it kind of runs along the lines of what we were talking about earlier as well. So I just thought it would be appropriate.
Before you read it, I just want to make sure you're good, so it doesn't like lag when you do it. So I just want to make sure everybody's like 100%. Yeah. So now you're clear.
Okay.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. This is called To My Quill. To my quill, you release the darkness within me, but never embrace the light. Maybe one day you will. I would like to thank you though. Without you, I don't know where I'd be. I'm not being dramatic. Honestly, I would be lost without you. You have given me a sense of purpose, a sense of achievement. I'm sorry for burdening you with all my fear and dread. Maybe you have anxiety too now. You get rid of the thoughts in my head, the ones held by the demons that probably want me dead. But you are the greatest friend I will ever have. You will never leave me like the others did. Sometimes I think you're the only one that understands, but that's stupid, right? You have allowed me to be me, and for that I will love you for eternity.
Whoa! That was beautiful. And it related back to what Dimitri was saying in the beginning about the pen being your friend.
Yeah. I realized when you said that, I was like, I recognize that sort of sentiment, but I just didn't think why. And then I was like, actually, I'm going to do that for you.
Great minds think alike. Great minds think alike. Definitely. Yeah, I love that. Great poem.
Thank you.
That was dope. Well, so again, this poem is the poem that inspired me to do the prompt called It's Okay to Be Me. And it's called The Introvert's Anthem.
Cool.
It's okay to be awkward. So don't tell me I need help. It's okay to be yourself instead of being somebody else. It's okay not to know what to say when a crowd is around. Your tongue bound in socializing chains that maintain holding you down. It shouldn't be surprising because it's okay to have introverted nerves that curve words and make sweaty palms. Butterflies flying in stomachs, stuttering tongues follow along. It's not coward to cower when you lack the power to entertain troops. Your truth is your truth. Being alone for you is home. Being away from safety is speaking in groups. I'm often silent because half the time I don't think your mind could process my awesomeness. I don't believe you could taste my mental state and still have a smile. And I don't convey words unless there's something important to say. Because why waste words when I see your words waste away in public conversations? It sounds like confusion when 1, 2, and 3 people are talking to me simultaneously and I can't focus on a single identity. Wanting to scream to shut up. Let my brain focus again. Let my heart slow its beating in this vocal season of hopelessness. I don't fit in, but I won't give in to the peer pressure of trying to be social or whatever. This is me. Silent when there's many. Loud when I choose. Thinking before I speak. My poetry kills my blues. See, on a mic, my words fly, but off the stage, I'm way too shy. And socializing at a party is equivalent to the moment you die. My, oh my, I can't tell if I'm more introverted or more perverted, but I'm an INTP, a logician personality with pens, prose of pro potentiality. I write because this is life. I write because within poetry, I am free. So see, it's okay to be awkward if being awkward is being me.
Woo! Yo, killed that. Yo, see, that's what I'm saying about spoken word. Like, this that switch, man. It's just like energy just like, you know what I'm saying? That was dope. No, I love that.
You have to express it in words. I completely get that.
No, definitely. That was great, man. That was
honored. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Word. So I definitely want to say that it means a lot for you guys to come on my platform and talk to little old me, because this is actually the first time that we all met face to face, And it was very, very cool to kind of, because what I call just like conversations is just a meeting of the minds. And then you kind of find yourself and you find others just in, you know, just sharing in perspectives and things like that. And this was a very nice exchange. This honestly has to be the most fun podcast that I've done since last year, you know, because I don't think I've done like a podcast. I'm like, yo, like, this is a really cool podcast. I honestly haven't done one, you know, so this is cool. I'm definitely going to be watching this back a lot. And I hope that we'll definitely get to talk, you know, a lot more and stay in contact in the future, you know, maybe some collabs or something like that, because kind of like when you guys were saying, you know, you grow as a poet, I'd love to see, you know, where my poetry takes me, you know, along with, you know, being in contact with you guys. So I'm not sure if you guys have any last words and, you know, whatever it is that you guys would like to say.
I'm just going to say most definitely, bro, keep in touch. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, you've got me as a fan now. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Friends come very few these days. So, you know.
Yeah, and hit me up anytime, man. Anyone that knows me knows I love to write. I'm always writing, and I don't think I've ever said no to a collab. And trust me, I've had some people that have asked me, and I'm like, how am I even gonna collab with them? But
right,
because their styles are so different. But I mean, I love to write, so I'm always down. Just hit me up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I might. I'll definitely take you up on that for real. Yeah, so with that said, for people who are watching and or listening, the video will be timestamped. So the timestamps will be in the comment section and description below. And yeah, I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.